Hello everyone, my name is Liu Hao. I'm from the National University of Defense Technology. I'm the first author of this paper. I'm very glad to have this opportunity to be here for this presentation. The name of this paper is BugSum, Deep Context Understanding for Bug Report Summarization. As you can see from the title, the words context and bug report in this title means that our work is mainly focused on the bug report and the context information. The word deep on the one hand represents a thorough understanding of the context information, and on the other hand means that the method we use is based on deep learning. The goal of this paper is to generate bug report summary automatically while focusing on the context information within. My presentation will consist of the following three sections. In the first section, I will present the motivation for our work, and then accordingly I will introduce our approach proposed based on the motivation. At last, I will show the performance and the experimental result of our approach. So first, let me introduce the motivation of this paper. Open source and commercial projects usually manage their discovered issues using bug repository. During this process, a large number of bug reports and discussions has been accumulated. Here we show what a bug report looks like. When contributors find bugs in the software, they submit bug report asked for a basic description about the exposed issue using neutral language. Then other stakeholders, including project managers, maintainers, or external contributors, discuss and likely put forward different standpoints to the issue in the form of comments. The original bug report and all discussions can be read by any stakeholders, who may evaluate and directly reply to those standpoints with their own opinions, and also in form of comments. We analyzed the 31,155 bug reports from 7 popular open source software projects. 25.9% of bug reports contain more than 15 comments, and each comment contains 39 words on average. 71.5% of bug reports contain evaluation behaviors that express attitudes of approval or disapproval within their conversation. As there are complex evaluation behaviors in bug reports, the standpoints proposed by these comments sometimes are proven to be wrong during the evaluation process. Here we illustrate an example of the complex evaluation behavior we mentioned above. The example is obtained in one of the Launchpad bug reports. In this bug report, the description explains an issue they encountered. One contributor, Thomas, replied in this bug report in the comment 8 and suggests that the comment he offered can solve this problem. As you can see, the command Thomas offered is simply remove this cache. And after his comment, the Jiaoming replied his comment in comment 10. It says Thomas' method fixed my problem. But after that, in comment 11, another contributor also proposed his suggestion. He suggests that the method Thomas proposed is not a good solution, and he suggests that we should simply reboot. And his suggestion is approved in comment 11 by another contributor. So this example illustrates a simple evaluation behavior in the bug report, and it suggests that some standpoints proposed by comments in bug report could be disproved during the evaluation behaviors. Therefore, not every sentences in bug report containing the correct information. Therefore, we refer to the comment that are disproved by at least one other comment as the controversial comment and the sentence in this comment as controversial sentences. Since the bug report have so many comments and contains such complex evaluation behaviors, reading the entire bug reports can lead to significant time consumption and sometimes even error. We found that controversial sentences is actually prevalent in bug reports. Under these circumstances, if summary included the solution of the disproved standpoints is selected into the summary, it will reduce the effectiveness of our generated summary. It may cause the user to try the wrong method, resulting in a waste of time, and may even introduce bias. Therefore, an accurate and concise summary can effectively reduce the time consumed in reading through all posted comments. Such summary should be written manually by the contributor of this bug report, ideally. While modern bug repositories encourage contributors to manually write a summary for each bug report, only 2.8% of the bug reports we studied were found to have been equipped with artifact summaries, and these summaries only contain 29 words on average, which is apparently insufficient to furnish stakeholders with the required information. Since manually construct summaries for all bug reports is not realistic, bug report summarization approach become a promising method to generate the summary automatically. They generate the summaries by selecting salient sentences to form the summary. The typical summarization approach mainly consists of these two types. The first type relies on the predefined structures, which usually is fixed template. It usually requires massive manual efforts to construct the template, and its performance excessively rely on the data. The second type summarization approach scores sentences based on word frequency and selects sentences with a higher score. This type of summarization approach is commonly used in previous studies. Regardless of whether these approaches are supervised or unsupervised, they are essentially scoring the sentences based on word frequency. They assume that words with higher frequency are usually more important, and sentences containing more high-frequency words are more salient. This type of approach have two disadvantages. First, as we discussed, sentences that contain high-frequency words may be found to be wrong during discussion, and select these sentences may introduce bias into the summary. Second, sentences that contain the same high-frequency word usually contain similar information, and choosing high-score sentences may lead to redundancy. So let's go back to the same example we illustrated before. Comment 8 is disproved by comment 11, so we refer to it as controversial comment, and the sentence in it as controversial sentences. The standpoint in these sentences is turned out to be incorrect. Since the standpoint being proposed by the controversial comment may be discussed by stakeholders for several rounds before it proven to be incorrect, words and sentences related to controversial comments have a relatively high appearance in the bug report. Therefore, controversial sentences are highly preferred by previous word frequency-based approaches, which would be introduce a significant bias into the summary. As for the redundant information, since comment 13 is evaluating comment 11 and comment 11 is evaluating comment 8, we refer to a group of comments like these comments that interacted by evaluation behaviors as a conversation. Since they usually share in the same domain word and other semantic information, sentences within the same conversation have relatively high semantic redundancy. If one sentence in a conversation have been assigned a relatively high salient weight, the other sentences in the same conversation may also have a similar high score due to the word similarity. Like this sentence in comment 11 and comment 13, these two sentences are exactly the same, but when we using approaches based on word frequency, they will be assigned with the same score and could both be selected into the summary. It will lead to redundancy in summary. Since there are word length limitations in the summary, such redundancy will decrease the comprehensiveness of the summary. To the conclusion, we need to generate summaries for bug reports automatically, which is achieved by selecting salient sentences to form the summary. We need to ensure the accuracy of the generated summary and the comprehensiveness of the information it contained. Therefore, during the salient sentence selection, the salience of a candidate sentence should be determined by the information it contained, which we referred as informativeness of sentences, and also the extent to which the standpoint is believable, which we referred as believability. To achieve such goals, accordingly, I introduced the design of our approach. We design a novel unsupervised approach BugSum based on our motivation. BugSum consists of 4 steps: bug report pre-processing, sentence feature extraction, sentence believability assessment, and summary generation. So in the first step, bug report pre-processing tokenizes the sentences and reduce the noises from it. It consists of word tokenize, stem, and stop word removal. Sentence feature extraction is deployed to extract domain features from sentences. We use an autoencoder network to extract features from the sentences. It expresses the textual features in the sentence into a feature vectors. As for the third step of BugSum, sentence believability assessment, BugSum captures the evaluation behaviors in bug reports and computes sentence believabilities based on these evaluation behaviors. We can form the evaluation behaviors in the bug report, since sentences supported by other sentences are more believable, while controversial sentences are likely to be incorrect. We use evaluation behavior to assess how believable a sentence is to be selected into the summary. Since we use multiplication when calculating the believability of a sentence, the believability score of each sentence is initialized to 1 so that it remains neutral during the calculation. We use opinion score to assess the opinion of a evaluator sentence towards the evaluated sentence. We denote the opinion score of sentence I as OP score I. Each opinion score is assigned using a pre-trained SVM classifier. We train the classifier over a dataset containing 3,000 sentences. These sentences are collected during our studies and manually labeled. Half of these sentences exhibit a negative opinions on the evaluated sentences. The SVM classifier takes a sentence as input and predicts the opinion of the input sentence. Instead of use this prediction directly, we use the predicted possibility, taking a value between 0 and 1. It indicates to what extent the sentence is expressing a negative opinion. To facilitate the calculation, we subtract the possibility from 0.5 and then multiply by 2, and use it as the sentence opinion score, whose value is between -1 and 1. For example, the sentence "I recommend against the Thomas method" expressing a negative opinion. Let's say the predicted possibility of this sentence is 0.9. Then, accordingly, we can obtain the OP score of this sentence as -0.8. On the contrast, the sentence "Thanks so much" and the Thomas method fixed my problem is expressing a positive opinion. Let's say its prediction possibility is both 0.1, so we can obtain their OP score as 0.8. As we obtain the sentence opinion score, we can evaluate the sentence believability score based on the evaluation behaviors in the bug report. For comment 10 and 13, as they are not evaluated by any other comments, their believability score can be initialized to 1. Comment 11 is evaluated by comment 13, so its believability score is modified based on comment 13. It can be calculated as 1.8. This value is higher than 1, so it means sentences in these comments are more believable. Comment 8 is evaluated by comment 10 and 11, so its B-score can also be calculated as 0.36. This number is lower than 1, and means that this sentence is more likely to be incorrect. For the summary generation, we first extract features from every sentence in the bug report and integrate them by adding them together. By doing this, we obtain a full text vector representing the textual information in the entire bug report. Meanwhile, we select part of the sentences from the bug report as the summary, and reconstructed the full text vector, which we referred as summary vector. We compare the reconstruction loss between the full text vector and the summary vector. A lower value of this loss indicates that the selected sentence contains more domain features of the entire bug report. Also, the design of the summary generation step can help reduce the redundant information in the summaries. During the selection, instead of focusing on the increase of the information, we focus on the loss of the information. In this case, BugSum tends to select sentences that contain other features to maintain the comprehensiveness of the selected sentence set. Also, to reduce the possibility of controversial sentences being selected into the summary, we take the believability of sentences into consideration during the summary generation. We take the sentence believability score as weight during the feature extraction step. If the believability is lower than 1, it means that it is more likely to be incorrect, and its effects toward the full text vector will be decreased, and vice versa. To conclusion, BugSum generates the summary automatically, reduce the redundancy in the summary through the dynamic selection, and reduce the possibility of the controversial sentences being selected into the summary by considering the believability of the sentences. We illustrate our experiment by answering the following 4 research questions. They mainly include 1. How does BugSum perform against the baseline approaches? 2. To what extent does BugSum reduce the controversial sentences being selected into the summary? 3. How do the parameters influence the performance of BugSum? And 4. How do sentence feature extraction and dynamic selection influence the performance of BugSum? In this study, we present a novel unsupervised summarization approach that considers sentence informativeness and believability to generate a more reliable and comprehensive summary for bug reports. In particular, our method is able to prevent most controversial sentences from being selected into the summary, which point a promising direction for the future work on conversation-based text analysis. That's all. Thank you for listening. Due to the time limitation, we will not introduce the details of the experiment in this presentation. The experiment details and the data can be obtained in our paper.